Do you want to take the biggest feature of Minecraft 1.21 and turn it into an absolute joke of a farm? Well, that's what I'll be showing you how to do in today's video, automatically farming the trial chambers for Minecraft Bedrock and Java Edition. And there's actually a good reason to farm them. You might already know all about the trial spawners, but let's go over it real quickly just for anyone who missed out. So these are basically a new type of mob spawner that can only be found in the trial chambers. However, they only spawn about maybe 5 or 7 mobs per person, but the more players that are in the area, the more mobs they will spawn. Now, once you've defeated all the mobs, they're going to kick some items out the top of there, and the regular spawners have a pretty basic loot table, but that includes the trial chamber key. Once you defeat a trial spawner, there's a 30-minute cooldown. After that cooldown, they can spawn another batch of mobs and give you a little bit more loot. You can actually skip this cooldown, though, by drinking an ominous bottle and starting an ominous raid. This will give you more mobs and more difficult mobs with enchanted armor and weapons, and defeating this ominous trial is what gives you the ominous keys and a different set of loot. Now, once you've done an ominous trial, this thing is once again on a 30-minute cooldown. As you can see, you do not get very many mobs from these spawners with a single player, but if you have a bunch of people on your server, then you could get, in theory, a lot more mobs. Using a trial chamber farm, you can get all these items for free infinitely, which none of it's really that good. What you're really here for is the trial chamber keys. These can be used to unlock the vaults. The vaults and the ominous vaults are sprinkled all around the trial chamber, but they can only be opened once per person, and these vaults are what actually give you the really good items, including the heavy core for the mace and the wind burst enchantment. As you can see, there's just an absolute ton of loot from these things, so it really is worth unlocking a lot of them. So the main point of a trial chamber farm is going to be to give you as many of these keys as you possibly can, as easily as possible. That way, when you go to raid a brand new trial chamber, you don't have to actually fight these spawners. Instead, you can focus on finding all the vaults and just getting the loot without having to grind through the mobs. So if you're trying to collect everything that you can from the ominous and regular vaults, you're going to be needing a whole lot of these keys. And the Windburst enchantment for the mace is also incredibly rare. You can only get Windburst 1 books from these ominous vaults, and you need a total of 4 of these Windburst 1 books just to make a single Windburst level 3. So yeah, you gotta open a lot of these things. So if you want to farm the trial spawners, you should probably know how they work. The trial spawners themselves are actually really simple, so they spawn mobs up to 1 block above the spawner and 1 block below. They also spawn mobs in a 9x9 diamond around the spawner on Bedrock Edition, and that's a 9x9 square on Java Edition. Now, of course, the trial spawners kick loot out the very top of the spawner, but on Bedrock Edition, there's a lovely little bug where it's actually like 1,000th of a block shorter than it should be. So as you can see, when we're standing on top of this, we're at Y64, but if we move over a block onto this quartz, as you can see, it goes up to Y65. This used to happen with regular mob spawners as well, but this means that we can just put a regular hopper underneath this thing, and that'll pick up all the items and loot from our spawner. Now, if this bug ever gets fixed, we can just move over to using a hopper minecart, which is what you need to use on Java Edition anyway. Due to these item pickup mechanics, you can actually have a lava source directly above the trial spawner, and you'll still be able to get all the loot from that spawner, like the trial keys. None of it actually burns. The trial spawners also need line of sight to the player in order to start spawning mobs, so as you can see, we are behind this wall right now, so that spawner cannot spawn anything. If we walk out over here, as you can see, it's going to start spawning zombies. This is interesting because it can actually see through transparent blocks like glass. Now, once you start spawning a mob, it doesn't really matter what you do, so you can run away, you can be as far away as you like, and that thing is still going to be spawning mobs. However, you do need to kill the first couple in order for the next ones to spawn, so you can't just let them sit there, you have to actually kill them. So if you fill in the entire area around the mob spawner, you're basically forcing all the mobs to spawn directly above the spawner, as you can see right here. It's a little bit slower this way, but it ensures that all the mobs are exactly where you want them, which makes farming them incredibly easy. As you can see, we can just sit here and kill the guys. So taking all that information, it's really easy to design a mob farm, or maybe 5 different mob farms. So there's a lot of different ways that you can farm these things, but honestly, they do not spawn enough mobs for me to really care about the mob loot or the experience, so I wouldn't bother setting up a trident killer at each and every one of these. If you wanted to, this is how you would do that, or you could simply funnel all the mobs into one trident killer, but again, not really worth it. In general, this is the easiest way to farm these things. You literally just spawn them directly into lava, they die, some of their loot gets collected, collected, and then you get all of the trial spawner loot as well. You can also set it up with a campfire. This will automatically kill all the mobs, give you all of their loot, and also give you all of the spawner loot. And for the larger mobs, like these spiders and slimes, well, just put a bunch of lava in there. Now, if you're playing on Java Edition, the trial spawners will not spawn a mob into a danger block, not even water or lava. So the best way to go about it is probably to let them spawn in there and then flood the area, and then you can just kind of like kill them in the corner, which I know, not really the best way to go about it, but at least you don't have to actually fight them or anything. And then at least you get looting as well, so it's not all bad, but it's not ideal. And let's hop into the tutorial. For your convenience, there's a full materials list down in the description of the video. This tutorial works for any of the different trial spawners that you can find in the trial chamber. There are quite a few different types. I'll go over some specifics a little bit later on for details and things that you might need to modify. Now, the build process is really easy. You're going to want to start off by choosing a mob spawner. Once you walk out of this thing, it's probably going to spawn some mobs. You can just go ahead and kill those guys real quick. I would check underneath the mob spawner to make sure there are no holes or caves or little rooms or anything. You want it to be all solid blocks underneath the spawner. So if this is up on a walkway, then you might need to fill in some blocks going down below it. I'm also going to clean up the area just by removing those so that we have a nicer area to work with. Now, I have a vault right here, so I'm going to make this side the actual front of the farm where we're going to be accessing our storage. So the first thing that we're going to do is install item collection. So we need to break out these 3 blocks right here to the front of the spawner and then 1 to the side. We're just going to be placing in a double chest right here for some temporary storage. Crouch and place in a hopper behind that. This should be right underneath your trial spawner. If you're not worried about collecting drops from the mobs, then you can go ahead and fill that block back in. We'll be using lava above the spawner, but if you do want to collect some drops from the mobs, then simply place in 1 more hopper right there, and then a blue campfire above it. That kills the mobs a little bit quicker. This campfire just makes sure that none of the items gets destroyed by the lava. So we're going to break out these 2 blocks right here and place in 2 stairs, and then we're going to place in 4 stairs going along this area right here. And now we have to fill in the entire area around our spawner. That way mobs always spawn right on top of it. So we need to go out 4 blocks in every direction from the spawner. We've already done that on the front side of our 4 stairs. So we're going to be going out 4 blocks in this direction, 4 blocks to the back side, and 4 blocks to the right side. And as you can see, that is going to make a 9x9 plus shape. So now we need to turn this into a 9x9 diamond. All you do for that is to connect up all of these corners going diagonally, just like so. And then, of course, you need to make sure to fill in all these empty gaps in the middle. So that's layer 1. We need to make this 1 more layer taller so that it's a block above the spawner. And this is what it should look like. As you can see, it is just 2 blocks tall, 1 block above the spawner, and we have the block directly above the spawner empty. This is where the mobs will actually be spawning. If this spawner is for any of the 1 tall mobs like silverfish or cave spiders or even zombies, then you want to put the lava directly above the spawner. But if it's for the skeletons, bogged, or breeze, then you can just put a sign right here, box it in with a couple more blocks at this layer, and then have the lava bucket be right here. Basically, we're trying to kill all the mobs, but not destroy so many of the drops. So if we have a skeleton in there, as you can see, its head will be in lava, and then any items that it will drop will just go into our chest. But if we had a silverfish in there, as you can see, it wouldn't get hit by the lava, and that's why you would need to lower down that lava by a block. If you're using the campfire version to try and get a little bit more mob drops out of this, then what you would want to do is have a block directly above the spawner. I would put a button right here, and then a glass block up with 1 more button, and then you simply want to box this in and put in another glass block right there. This will give the mobs plenty of room to spawn in there, and then they'll all die on top of the campfire. And this farm right here will work for all of the mobs in the trial chamber except for slimes and the regular spiders. It's also quite the good noise machine. So what if you do have regular spiders or slimes? Well, it's a pretty simple fix. What we're going to be doing is we're going to be having a 3x3 opening above our spawner like this, and then simply place in a lava bucket directly above it. If you have regular spiders, you can just go ahead and put a roof directly above it, just like so, just a little 3x3 of blocks directly above the lava, and that will kill all of your regular spiders just fine. Now, if you have slimes, we need to build another layer above this, a full square of blocks right here, and then we need 1 more layer on top of that so that the large slimes can actually fit inside of there. And now go ahead and put a little 3x3 roof on top of this thing. That way nothing can bounce out of there. And for the most part, that's going to contain every slime in your farm. However, there is a bug with the large slimes where they can split, and smaller ones will end up like several blocks over to the southeast. So there's several different ways to find your direction. I'm going to be using a sunflower. This always faces to the east, so we know that this direction right here is the southeast. So on the southeast side of this farm, we're just going to break out a couple blocks here, here, and here. Place in a few magma blocks. As you can see, we have an X of magma blocks right here, and the lava should flow on top of both of those ones, but it doesn't really matter what the lava does. We're just going to put in some glass blocks on all of these edges, and then cover up that right there, and that will contain any of your baby slimes that split out of this thing. I've tested it like a good 40 times, and I haven't had slimes escape from this setup, but that little bug is kind of annoying. If it's too hard to access this chest right here, what you can do is break out this block and replace it with a stair and that orientation, and then you can also stand on a lower slab, and as you can see, that makes it a lot more accessible. Now, if you want to automate this and AFK farm your trial chambers, it's really easy. All you need to do is set up a rail line going in front of each one of these stairs. That way, as you're in a minecart going across here, the spawner can see you and start spawning mobs, and then as you can see, this rail just goes down to the other one. You're going to turn around and go off to the rest of your trial chamber and activate the rest of your spawners. There's about 20 or so spawners per trial chamber, so you can build a lot of these things and actually get a pretty decent amount of loot. To demonstrate that, we can just hop into this minecart right here. We'll just roll on past. As you can see, that spawner already spotted, and then this spawner activated as well, and now we can turn on around and go back to the rest of our trial chamber. Now, if you're playing on a laggy realm or something and these spawners aren't detecting you as you zoom by on a minecart, then you might need to put an unpowered rail right here. That way you actually stop, and that way you stay there long enough for the spawner to spot you, and then you push through and go ahead and activate your next spawner. So as you can see, these things are just going to spawn away, and then your minecart's going to be going back and forth and taking you all around the trial chamber. And that's all there is to trial chamber farming. If you enjoyed this video, then drop a like, share it around, and subscribe.